You know Boruto 2 Blue Vortex chapter is wild when Shikamaru is out here making wartime painting speeches, Sarada is out here speed running her Mangekyo Sharingan side effects because she's basically going, I've been wearing glasses my whole life, so what's a little bit more blindness gonna hurt? And Daemon, yes, that Daemon is basically jumping up and down like a kid who just heard recess got extended because he's finally gonna fight somebody seriously. Chapter 31 isn't just an invasion chapter. This is the moment where every bad variable that Shikamaru calculated suddenly said, yeah, we're not doing none of that. Mamushi didn't pull up with 30 clones. He didn't bring 50. He brought 200. And now the guy who prides himself on that 200 IQ plan has to do something that he hates, which is to improvise. Meanwhile, Ada, the literal target of this entire assassination attempt, is being told, congratulations, you're the bait, which she understandably is not thrilled about. While her little brother Daemon is in the background like, finally, I got a reason to stop holding back. Ada and Sarada pushing her Mangekyo to the point where the warning lights are starting to flicker, Boruto entering the battlefield, and Kobu basically telling Shikamaru, hope this gamble was worth your Hokage seat, and you get the chapter that feels much less like a skirmish and more like the exact moment where a strategy turns into a crisis. So with that being said, join your OBC, your original Boruto chief, for chapter 31 because this chapter explores what happens when Shikamaru's war of calculations and Kashin Koji's consequentialism meets good old-fashioned chaos. We open up this chapter where the last one left off. Mamushi's looking down at Kobu and vowing to kill him, which leads to Kashin Koji telling Inojin that it's time to let Kobu die and to switch back to his own body, and Inojin rightfully says, I can't do that because Kobu's a civilian, and as these two argue, Mamushi springs forward trying to kill Kobu, but Inojin, operating off a basic instinct, is able to avoid the attack, but only barely, and Inojin realizes taking over the body of a civilian with no ninja training limits how quickly he can move. It's at this point that Inojin pushes back further, telling Kashin Koji he won't let Kobu die because as a shinobi, he has to protect someone like Kobu, otherwise there's no real reason to call himself a ninja. Meanwhile, Ada is on edge, not being able to see what's going on with her Sharingan, and when Daemon tells her to just use her dojutsu, she explains to her brother why she's afraid because as she plays back to what happened when Mamushi spied on her before, she got the feeling that Mamushi, when he meets eyes with someone, he can gather intel and she's worried he'll be able to see her location. That this is the other power of Mamushi. She tells Daemon in so many words that it's foolish to think that his only power is multiplication, and she says that this is Mamushi's true goal, to stir up so much chaos that she can't help but use her Sharingan to look for him, and all it would take is a moment for him to gain the info. What we're seeing here is basically Ada applying one of the 48 laws of power, which the law in particular talks about stirring up waters to catch a fish. The concept's similar. When you cause disruptions intentionally, it allows you to make people act in ways that they never planned to, and you control the cards that they're playing with, which allows you to secure a victory, which is what Mamushi's goal is here. And what's impressive is Ada's deduction is spot on, as we'll see in a moment, which that speaks volumes to her intelligence and her perception ability. She may not be a ninja, but she is clearly seeing through deception, ironically faster than some of the shinobi that she's leaning on to protect her. Shinobi like Sarada, who is looking at the Mamushi clones and not too sure what she's looking at behavior-wise. The Mamushi clones that Sarada and Delta are watching are behaving erratically and their personality is shifting, which in the Japanese version, the way that the speech patterns are set up, Mamushi's words, they're blending together, literally combining words as he's speaking, almost like a drunkard that's talking and not fully enunciating his words, and it's making it harder to understand, which that makes the whole thing where the Mamushi clones start fighting each other that much funnier because they're not just drunk talking, they're behaving like angry drunks as well. The first clone confirms Ada's suspicion. As soon as she uses the Sharingan, he'll be able to spot her, but the other clone gets impatient and demands to know when's that gonna happen, which leads to the first clone walloping the guy on the side of the face, and then the third Mamushi clone smacks the first clone in the back of the head. Full-blown slapstick comedy, but What we see here beneath the comedy is that the aggression's building up, and it's getting to the point where even Delta is growing confused and concerned, and for good reason. The first Mamushi clone just randomly busts out a fire release jutsu to burn the other clone, ignoring that he's endangering the Konoha citizens who are watching. Meanwhile, back in the interrogation room, Shikamaru is confronted by Sai, who demands to know what Shikamaru is doing with his son, and he wants to know how Shikamaru got the intel that he did about the Shinju being after Ada, because even Sai, the leader of the Anbu Black Ops, he didn't have that intel, and Sai outright threatens Shikamaru with violence if he does not come clean. Shikamaru takes a moment for a beat, and then he tells Sai, "I know you're worried about your son, but right now, we can't afford to look at the situation like parents. We have to look at the situation like shinobi first, especially when the village is in danger." And what we're seeing here is further building upon the conflict that every Hokage faces when they have a family, and one that was set up all the way back in Naruto chapter 700 as still being applicable even during Naruto's time as Hokage. Naruto told Boruto, after he stopped him from painting the Hokage monument in that chapter 700, that "I can't always be your father first. There are times where, as Hokage, I have to put the village first, and as you get older, once you become a shinobi, you'll understand why." Naruto struggled to walk that tightrope, and now Shikamaru's Hokage has to walk that rope, and his words to Sai are a reminder that they've been prepared for this ever since the war ended. The first three people that Kakashi promoted as Hokage to Jonin after the war, in order, were Shikamaru, Sakura, and Sai. Which Naruto being promoted, that was anime filler. That never happened. They were the future pillars of the village. Each were being groomed to potentially become Hokage if the time called for. Shikamaru was the direct aide of the Hokage. Sakura was the leader of the hospital, and Sai was the leader of the Anbu Black Ops intelligence. Shikamaru's words, they cut deeply into Sai, and he closes his eyes, and he's piecing everything together from the mission in the Sand Village to everything happening now. Everything that Shikamaru is doing, he's been doing for the village. And so Sai's response is simple. "Tell me what it is that you need me to do." It's a nice moment, albeit it's a bittersweet one, in that Sai is setting aside his concern as a parent to be a shinobi first, and the weight of protecting the innocent comes at a cost, something that Sarada is about to learn all too quickly. Mamushi is preparing to attack another Mamushi clone, basically looking at the innocent civilian nearby as collateral damage. But suddenly, Sarada has activated her Mangekyo Sharingan and her Ohirume Jutsu. Black spears, they're flying all around her, and she's flown to the scene, ready to raise hell. Within seconds, she's got a half dozen Mamushi clones lifted into the air, and when more try to attack her from behind, Sarada turns her head to get a look at them, and that immediately lifts the other clones into the air as well. She wastes no time, drawing the Mamushi clones into one of her gravity spears, and begins to start crushing the clones, instantly ensnaring 3 of the 20 and immediately sucking up the rest into the spear, which impresses even Delta by what it is that she's seeing. However, that's where we get confirmation of the weakness of this jutsu that's never been stated in the manga chapters, but was revealed in the database entry for Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan power. Basically, the way that Ohirume operates, it allows her to reach Otsutsuki levels of flight speed and control gravity and expand the portals up to 8 feet in size before she detonates the spears. But she can only control the gravity of the people or attacks that she is laying eyes on. Basically, she has to see it, but once she sees it, it's under her control. Sarada explains this to Delta, who wastes no time rushing after the remaining Mamushi clones, and Delta moves quickly to dispatch the clones while their guards are being lowered. She kicks one onto the ground, and then she quickly turns to face the other 2 clones before they can react, and she hits them with that destructive eye beam jutsu from her ninja tech in her eyes that destroys whatever it hits on a cellular level, albeit at a great cost of chakra on Delta's part. She then flies into the air and stomps the head of the 2 remaining clones, and for good measure, she extends her limbs in the ninja tech inside her body into spikes in order to crush through their eye to ensure that these clones are destroyed. Meanwhile, as Sarada detonates the Mamushi clones in one blast, we see our first sign that Sarada's eyesight is beginning to burn out from using the Mangekyo Sharingan on such a wide scale to take down 20 foes. If you pay attention to the paneling, in the top panel, as Sarada's chakra is building in her eye and you see the blood trickling out, the triangles in the eye, they're all a very solid black. But in the panel right after that, as the blood is beginning to fully trickle out of her eye, the triangles in that eye using Ohirume, they're no longer shaded in as thick, and Ikimoto wants you to pay attention to this. This is deliberate because he zoomed in the lens on the panel in order to draw your attention to it. He's showing you before that reveal what it was that happened, and it's a nod to Naruto fans who have remembered the Naruto manga. When Mangekyo Sharingan begins to lose its light, the eyes quite literally get a shade lighter over time. It's deliberately inked that way until it becomes painfully obvious, like when Itachi used Susanoo against Sasuke after he used Kirin in Naruto Volume 43. At that point, Itachi's eyes were completely whited out. So what Ikimoto's doing is he's continuing to lay it on thick by having Sarada hold the side of her head, and as she lowers herself down towards the ground, we see that her eyes, they have lost light even when her Mangekyo Sharingan and even when her Sharingan is not even activated. And that's a really good use of anticipation panels to guide your eyes subconsciously before you turn the page and you see from Sarada's perspective what it is that she's seeing. Delta is completely blurry. She can still see the outline of most of her features, but they're way less defined. And it's a nice callback to what happened with Sasuke after the Killer Bee fight, where Sasuke had vision issues as well, to the point that in Naruto chapter 415, he can barely see the water glass in front of him that he knocks over. Sasuke before that Killer Bee fight, and also during the fight with Killer Bee. So over the span of volume 44 and volume 45, he used the Mangekyo Sharingan only 4 times, but it was enough to eat away at his vision. And now his daughter Sarada has used the Ohirume Jutsu in only a couple of fights, but she's used it in multiple applications in those fights, and this time taking out multiple enemies all at once. And she's now joining that Blind as a Bat club that was founded by Madara Uchiha over 100 years ago in the timeline, but unlike Madara, Sarada does not have a sibling that she can pluck out the eyes from. Back on top of the Hokage rooftop, Mamushi is throwing Kobu around, and Koji goes from trying to reason with him to outright taking matters into his own hands by forcibly breaking Inojin's mind transfer jutsu. When Inojin begins to go off on him, Kashin Koji cuts off Inojin, saying to restart his mind transmission formation jutsu to link everyone together because Koji is worried about Inojin's friends. But the moment that Inojin does so, he immediately alerts Shikamaru to get onto the rooftop and to protect Kobu before Mamushi can kill him. But Shikamaru inside, they get there a moment too late. Mamushi has already set his eyes on Kobu, but before things can escalate any further, Boruto has flown towards the Hokage Tower. He has his Coma Seal activated, and in one swing, he cuts off the heads of all the Mamushi clones, and he turns to Kobu to use Koma to absorb the flames on Kobu's body before they can burn him alive. However, Kobu quickly goes from being shot at being alive and being saved by the traitor Boruto to back into full-blown politician mode. He demands to know what it is that's going on here. And after being told that these are the Shinju I warned you about, this was trying to kill you, Kobu tells Shikamaru he'll allow him to do his job, but the investigation, it isn't over, and he's going to make sure that Shikamaru pays full consequences. That's when Boruto turns his attention to Kashin Koji, and he asks a very loaded question. Did you know that I was going to save Kobu, or was this merely a coincidence? And Koji's answer is vague and it's dark. Basically that it was one outcome that I saw, but the ideal outcome is that Kobu needs to die, and that has not changed in my opinion. That needs to happen. It's yet another layer of dynamite being added beneath the relationship of Boruto and Kashin Koji, because Koji's answer can be interpreted in both ways, and given the consequentialist mindset of Kashin Koji and the glare that Boruto's giving, it's easy to see that Boruto, he doesn't trust Koji. That brings us to Inojin now informing everyone that there are over 200 Mamushi clones inside the village, and Shikamaru reveals that things they've gotten out of hand. And so the only option left, it is now to use Ada as bait to draw Mamushi in, which that comically sets Ada off to a point that the idea being used as bait completely pisses her off. But on top of her hating the idea of fighting, as we were told in Boruto Part 1, she's outright saying, I didn't volunteer for this at all, but Shikamaru states that this is their only real option, and upon hearing this, Daemon sits up straight and he's grinning that wicked smile because it means for the first time in his life he's gonna get a chance to fight all out, and he's outright saying the quiet part out loud over the objections of his sister. This should have been the plan all along. And so we got a pint-sized Daemon ready to unleash bloodlust on the Mamushi clones, and even though he's crazy enough to go 200 against 1, which is likely how Ada and Himawari were killed in the original timeline, that they were trying to prevent from happening, Daemon won't be fighting alone. He'll have to share the Mamushi clones with Team 7, Boruto, Himawari, Kawaki, Delta, and Team 10. While that's going to be it for this chapter review, you can click here on the left to check out the Boruto 2 Vortex chapter review playlist. That way you can catch up on any chapters that you've missed, or you can click here to watch my new Oshinoko video essay on my Anime Explained channel.